Everyone. Hi, Fran. Nice to have you here, along with you, Elliot. We're just going to let some people join and then we'll begin. Hi, Kish.
It's so nice seeing all of these names that I recognize. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen you guys in ages.
I'm glad to hear that, though. Like, there's recognizable names and there's going to be new names, so it's a nice mixture of people.
For sure.
Cool. So yeah, so just for everyone in the audience and also our panelists, we'll give it another 3 minutes for people just to get their bearings and join us. And then about 4 or 5 past, we'll begin. I will just give a little spiel and then our amazing chair, Sophia, will take it from there. Just gonna check. Cool. But hope you all in the audience are having a great day. Our lovely panelists are having a great day too. They probably use different grammar, but you know, I'm gonna just say great. And if they didn't say great, I'd probably be like, okay, gun to the head for me, boom. I've not given them justice. But hey. Cool. But awesome. But please, for the next 3 minutes, panelists, feel free to talk, basically. This is the one time you can just be free to talk to each other without me having there's questions.
We're a whole audience too. No pressure.
I like questions, but yeah, hi to everyone who's in the chat. It's lovely to see everyone.
Kish says Robin needs to drop the mic at the end.
Not with how much this cost me, no, I'm not going to drop it. This is securely bolted to this table.
Absolute sense. That definitely, when you spend that money, you don't want to lose that money.
You don't have any to start off with.
Amazing. So we got 19. Another 1 more minute, guys, and then we'll begin.
I'm busy talking about Blinks the Time Sweeper on Twitter while we're waiting.
What an underrated gem. Oh,
I like Blinks.
That's basically what I'm saying. But I said it, I'm marketing for a game. The character was scary as.
Is that game on backwards compatibility for Xbox One?
I don't know, because I completed it so long ago. I think and it's it's a very innovative game. I think people make fun of it because the character's unusual and a bit weird. But we've had but the actual gameplay is stunning. At the time was stunningly original. No one had ever done that before. They actually used the hard, there's a games console had a it was the first games console that had a hard drive put in, so you could take advantage of the hard drive to do actual proper time manipulation, which was really interesting.
I think part of it was possibly as well to do with the audience that Microsoft were trying to garner at the time. They were going for that more high fidelity, key adult audience. And I think people stereotyped Blinks a little bit as a game for kids, and it sort of flew under the radar.
It's not really a kid's game.
No, but I think it, you know what I mean? I had that sort of, aura to it when they were marketing and stuff. And, when you look at the box and stuff like that, and it got sort of brushed over.
Yeah, I think, there's inherent problems with the culture's attitude to games in there as well, in the fact that games still are by mass culture considered to be for children.
Yeah.
Because because play is considered to be for children, and games are associated with play. So like any game, I was speaking to someone on Facebook, a friend on Facebook the other day, and his 10-year-old child is trying to let him have Grand Theft Auto. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe I should let him play Grand Theft Auto. Like, no, really, here's a list of why you should not let your 10-year-old play Grand Theft Auto. It's up to you. There's no law. There's actually no law saying that a kid can't play Grand Theft Auto. There's a law saying the kid can't buy Grand Theft Auto because it's an 18-rated game. Yeah, the kid was doing the classic. Oh yeah, you can mod the game, so it's okay, and it takes violence and stuff out of it. I'm like, yeah, I think he's lying to
Yeah,
you.
I remember years ago when I used to work in game during my university days, and the amount of conversations you'd have with like, do you know about this game? Are you sure you get the themes and everything? And be like, oh, it's fine, it doesn't matter, it's just a game. I'm like,
I worked in a branch, 2 stints of working in the game shop, and I used to refuse and tell parents really clearly that they shouldn't be buying this. And you used to get like a 12-year-old kid to come up and try and buy an 18-rated game, and you would say, I'm not selling that to you, it's an 18-rated game. And then the kid would literally just walk over there to the parents, get the parents to come and buy. And I'm like, you do realise it has sex, drugs, prostitution, and shooting people in the face. Like, yeah, but little Johnny wants it.
Yeah.
It's mad.
Yes.
But
and also, top active, no one noticed, but I got fined £3.5
I used to work at Woolworths. Meanwhile, on Twitter, I'm currently seeing Dave Starkey trending and playing the game of Dead or Racist. Turns out very racist.
Yeah, I mean, is that surprising?
No, not at all. I mean, there's more. It's the fact there's more racist. Anyway, sorry, Dom. Are you trying to make a start?
no, it's all good. At least people
Okay, cool.
know. But let's begin, because it seems that people are going to slowly join throughout. So welcome to everyone who's here already to this collaboration panel between DigiPride and Raise the Game. Really appreciate you all coming here, and I really appreciate not only DigiPride for having us collab, but also collab with Robin, who is the owner of Gayming Magazine. I always pronounce it wrong. I always go Gayming Magazine, and it's just like, no, I'm forgetting the Y.
Gaming with a Y.
There we go. So it's really appreciative. I'm just going to give, I'm not here to talk long. So my name's Dom. I'm office manager at Ukie, but I also manage all EDI activity. I'm also, in terms of, like, for me, from LGBT side, I'm pretty much the only one wearing the cap amongst the Ukie team. However, everyone in my team is such a great ally, like, amazing, and that's the reason why I was allowed to put this event on really suddenly, because everyone was just like, yeah, go for it, Dom. So I'm really glad, not only for my team, but for the amazing people who are here to join me today, to not only just discuss their own journeys, but also what Pride means to them, and overall LGBT plus representation within the games industry. So without further ado, let me pass you to the lovely chair, Sophia, to do an introduction for herself and to begin.
Yes, hi everyone, and welcome to this panel. Obviously, Dom's given you the introduction about what we're going to talk about, but yeah, I'll be chairing and keeping the conversation flow going between all of us. Just to introduce, as you can see, my name's Sophia Aubrey Drake. Most people do know me will know me from Pocket Gamer, Steel Media, and I lead the Big Indie Pitch, helping indie developers around the world to showcase their games and gain more exposure. And that's what I've specialised in primarily, is working with indie developers from all around the world. I'll get into the LGBT side of things when we start the conversation, but before all of that, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. So let's start with Robin.
Everyone, hopefully most people should know me. My name is Robin. As Dom said, I'm the founder of Gaming with a Y magazine, the world's only LGBTQ video games magazine. We are currently running our DigiPride, which is a 3-month-long celebration of Pride, and I'm really happy that this is part of that celebration.
Yeah, does anyone want to go next? Who have we got? Well, we'll
I'll
go in
go?
my... Yeah.
Oh, so I'm
Off you, no,
just to
off you
get
go,
out of the
Shay.
way.
Yeah.
So I'm Shay. I'm a presenter within like the video games industry. I kind of have worked for like McLaren, hosting their Shadowcast. I've worked with BAFTA a whole bunch too. So you'll hear like my voice in several places. I'm also a producer at Glasshouse Games. And yeah, I obviously really like video games, and I get paid to talk about them. So it's something I really enjoy doing.
Yeah. And we'll go to Simon, since you're next on my list, as the order can see everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Simon Smith, and I've been a game designer and producer in the games industry for about 20 years. Codemasters, Blitz Games, Sony. I have my own company called Thumbfood now, and I also am the chair of Gameopolis, which is the Greater Manchester and Surrounding Area Games Network. And I have spent time in the past as an activist. Specifically, I spent a lot of time working with the Gay Football Supporters Network, where we helped set up fan groups for gay football supporters, and we founded the Rainbow Laces campaign to get footballers and people wearing rainbow laces and supporting LGBT issues. And there's a Rainbow Laces weekend every, well, November, October, moves around a little bit because of the football season. So I've been involved in activism from an LGBT perspective.
And last but not least,
I'm Cinzia. My cat has decided to make an appearance as well, so you might see her tail, or maybe hear her meowing as I'm talking. But so I'm operations project manager and lead of diversity and inclusion at Splash Damage, and my pronouns are she/her.
Fantastic, yeah. So, thank you so much to all of you for being here. Yeah, I mean, the first question that we're going to start with, I suppose we'll just keep it simple, is just us personally, and what it means to the wider part is, what does Pride mean to you, and how have you experienced, Pride industry and everything like that? I mean, to get the ball rolling, I can start with myself. So, I'm sure some people will know, some people might not know, and it will become obvious why some people will know when I tell, a brief bit of my introduction. But so I'm transgender, and I identify as pansexual as well. And I actually came out, I was fairly well known before my transition, and I actually came out on stage as a part of Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki for the first time, because I found it easier to do it in one go. And so for me, Pride within the industry has meant an awful lot, because everyone was just so supportive in helping me become the person I was always meant to be. That sense of pride that everyone else had in supporting me helped imbue me to sort of, move forward and be positive. So, and from there, I've seen it not just in the way people have respected me and when I did transition, but also in the way that visibility helps other people come forward. And I think sometimes having that platform can just help other people. But that's just a brief bit about me. But obviously, I'm just the person keeping the conversation flowing. So let's start with we'll start with you, Robin, since you've got your mic on. So what does Pride mean?
I'll turn it off.
What does Pride mean to you? Obviously, for you guys, you're quite, we're all deeply involved, but especially for you guys, you're hearing so many stories on a regular basis, and and helping display them. What does it mean to you personally, and to the people you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, personally, let's start with personal. So I was a fairly kind of late bloomer to the LGBT world. So I came out formally when I was about 26. I'm 34 now, for context. I know I don't look it. And for me, it's very much a case that it was about self-acceptance. Pride to me is about self-acceptance. Without sort of butchering a quote from RuPaul too much, if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else? And so for me, it took me a long time to sort of get used to loving myself the way of any child. So it had, and from a very small, so there was a sort of the natural pressures of lineage, etc., and just wanted to sort of conform. And I think it took me a long time to get my head around that. But here I am now. And I think, and yes, absolutely. From the flip side of from Gayming Magazine's point of view, we represent everyone. And the power of what we do isn't just the fact that we write about games. We welcome such a broad spectrum of contributors to write about their passion. So we have a variety of voices from every corner of the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And I'm super, super proud of that, and from around the world as well. So everybody can tell the same story in a different way. So we've even had examples where people have written about the same game and had different opinions. And that's great. That's exactly what I wanted to achieve with gaming, because Pride is very much, for me, about self-acceptance, self-expression, and you can have two different takes on the same game. Somebody can interpret it different to somebody else. And Pride, as well as an event, it's why deliberately we're doing this for 3 months, not 1 month. It's because Pride sometimes gets a little bit stuck in that it's June, we'll turn off, we'll go rainbow and then flip it back again. I can see the Twisters in the audience watching, and we had a little exchange on Twitter when I dared everyone yesterday to sort of keep their rainbow things going and not just flip them straight back. And obviously she pointed out that Ukie's one is rainbow all year round, and kudos to them for doing that. I was actually really inspired by what took place this year. Obviously, we are going through an unprecedented sort of times of lockdown, but I know that around the world, various people came out as a protest, and it was amazing to see it happen with the commercial side of it stripped out and actual genuine, real messages coming out. And I found that 10 times more inspiring than the sort of pride-washed, rainbow-washed, corporately washed experiences. That being said, obviously corporate money is lovely, and I can do loads with it that really does genuinely help the community. So I don't begrudge the commercial side of it, but I begrudge it in a sense that it sometimes pushes the true meaning and the true sort of messaging of Pride to the side.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. But, you know, before we delve into some more of those issues, let's hear some other stories. So let's go to Cinzia, in the interest of not doing the same order every single time, and your lovely cat.
She's gone now, so I won't see me pin her down so that you don't just see her tail. So Pride, particularly in the games industry, has been really significant for me, because up until last year, I didn't really feel comfortable coming out at work. So I'm straight passing, I'm married to a man, and I'm bisexual. It took a very long time to be able to just say that comfortably within the workplace, because it just never felt relevant for the longest time. And so just like seeing everything that's happened, and kind of like people talking, especially about ability and how it belongs in LGBTQ+, which never, like it, I've always felt kind of like as me sitting on the side of that, and being able to kind of like come with the community and be there for other people has been really important, and it's kind of like helped me feel more comfortable with myself fully at work. So this year, being able to kind of like help organizing and participating in events and everything has been quite important, being more comfortable with being in the community.
Yeah, definitely. And let's go next to Shay. So what does Pride mean to you?
So I came out as I guess quite early on in my life. I kind of knew that. It was like the one thing I knew about myself when I was a teenager. I actually thought I was a lesbian for a very, very long time. And I was like, oh no, this is, you know, I'm an equal opportunities lover. And that was kind of where I went from there. And then I've worked like a whole bunch of different jobs before I started presenting. I was a stylist for a little bit. I worked at H&V for a while. So yeah, all over the place. And every time, like, I kind of have to explain this part that is very important about myself and something that I am proud of. It was always met with, like, you know, various levels of like harassment or, you know, abuse or whatever. And like coming into the games industry 2 years ago, it was the first time I about myself, because I feel like whenever you step into a new space, you are sort of coming out again. To like, you know, it's never like a one and done process. It is something that happens all the time. Doing that in the games industry felt very natural. It was the first time that, you know, I didn't do it like, you know, and felt like uncomfortable about it. I actually felt very comfortable in this industry as a bisexual woman. And yeah, that's something that has still remained the case like 2 years later.
And last but not least, Simon.
I have a similar background to Robin. that I was probably what I would describe as homophobic when I was younger, but mainly because I didn't have any gay friends. And I think that's shaped how I view how you react to other people and how you sort of interact with other people as well. So I kind of, just apart from the fact that I was avoiding getting involved with anything. So like at university, if ever anyone asked me, so I never denied I was gay. I just said I want to retain my air of mystery, which is always my funny way of getting out of talking to it. And I didn't want to hang out with, I didn't LGBT society. I didn't want to hang out with gay people. I didn't really go to gay bars. I went to a city where there wasn't a lot of gay groups or bars when I was at university. And yeah, so I didn't have any gay friends until after I joined the games industry. My friend Steve, who was really my first proper gay friend, and became friend with his group of friends that I'm still friends with to this day, and our strong group, and we spoke this morning and that sort of thing. So I think it's a bit like, one of the things I'm getting at there is it's a bit like, so like I think sometimes people that are prejudicial to other people, part of the issue is they don't know any people like that. So I've met plenty of people that are homophobic, and they're like, well, do you know any, or racist? And you say to them, well, do you know any black people? And they're like, no, I don't know any black people. I'm like, well, can you just like be prejudicial against people you've never even met? You don't even know. I come from an area in the middle of the country, Derbyshire, with the furthest point away from anything really. There's not a lot of non-white people there. You didn't really think there's not a lot of gay people there because you just don't know anyone. And yeah, I think one thing I found is that when people are exposed more, myself included, to different aspects of society, then they become more understanding and realise there's different people there with different views and different aspects of society.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And from my own point of view, I'm Welsh. I grew up in North Wales, and I've always thought, I spent most of my life very confused about who I was. Nothing really made sense. My mind and my body didn't match or anything. And I think you're right. If we have more exposure and more awareness, it makes that whole area feel more understanding and accessible, and people can reach out and get help and support and go through things and just talk about stuff. And I suppose that brings us on to one of the points I wanted us to discuss, which is, how can the industry itself support pride and LGBT plus people, from all different types of LGBT plus people? Because I think there's two different areas to that. There's one in the sense of people can help by being open and talking about their experiences and who they honestly are. And then I think obviously, allies can talk by just being open and accessible to talking about these issues with people, even if they can't necessarily understand. It's giving people a safe space. But, I'd love to hear the thoughts of the panel as to what our industry can do, because we've got a high number of LGBT people, and, a lot of people say it's more accepting, but I suppose there's always still work to be done. So, yeah, does anyone want to kick us off with any thoughts that they might have about this? I've got, yeah.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, go on, Robin. Perfect.
I did genuinely turn the mic on this time, so yeah. So a great example was on Tuesday. I was invited to give a talk and then stayed on for another panel in the new coronavirus way with Sumo Games. And it was their first go around of doing any kind of pride activation internally. And I think for me, it was a great opportunity for a company to sort of stand up and say, like, we're going to get people in, we're going to sit and talk about it, and I think there was a great point raised as to how you can engage people outside of the LGBT world within companies. And it is through allyship. We wouldn't be, as a community, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are now in terms of rights and equality without allies. And for me, I think it's absolutely important that people are invited into these spaces to listen, to learn, to engage. And I think having people that are confident and happy to put themselves forward to talk as we're doing now, I think just helps with that education. It sort of feeds a little bit into what Simon was saying around, if you haven't met LGBT people, then you might have certain views. Well, this is a great opportunity to come and learn, to come and listen, and to come and sort of be part of a community and take something away from them.
I think jumping off of that point as well, I think people, like allies in particular, need to be like, they need to get used to being uncomfortable. Like if you have questions, like ask those questions. Like, I'd rather you ask, get it wrong, but that's an opportunity to learn. I say the same thing when people talk about like intersecting with race. Like they're like, you know, how can I do more? As people are really scared of being wrong, and I guess like, you know, our internet culture has stuff to do with that. That's something I'll get into later on. But like, yeah, I think just ask your questions. Like, you're gonna get it wrong at first, but that's an opportunity to learn, and that's something that people should grasp like eagerly with both hands.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've always said I'm more than happy to talk to people. I think it's not really about, you know, worrying about being wrong. It's, you know, we can all tell when there's malice and when there's honesty and integrity, you know, and a desire to learn. And everyone, you know, we should never be upset when people wanted to learn, because it's the way that we grow. But yeah, I mean, Cinzia, you know, part of your role is specifically about helping, you know, diversity, and, you know, obviously through that includes LGBT plus people. I mean, you know, what do you think we can do more as an industry?
Well, there's a few things. Visible allyship is so important, and it's something that we never consider. But having like the rainbow T-shirts, the rainbow things, and having people in leadership wear those things proudly, and kind of like being comfortable with being a part of the conversation, it makes your employees feel accepted. And it's a good beginning point, right? And like Shay was saying, having those conversations and being okay with being uncomfortable, and being okay with like bringing people in and telling them this might be uncomfortable, but we need to talk about it, is going to get us like to move forward a lot. I always kind of like approach it from the point of view of educating people, and try to always have like circles where it's kind of like it's all positive intent, and just like try to bring conversations like this. And it helps because like if you go in and be like, no judgment, all positive intent, people can ask those questions that they would be worried to ask about otherwise. But bring in people, like external people, into your studio to talk about it, and to give perspectives that will make people in the studio feel less like they're being attacked because it's one of the colleagues talking about it. Is a good way to kind of approach it too.
Yeah, and Simon, I was, you're ready to go.
First thing, we need to start from a position of supporting each other. So we need to support LGBT plus people ourselves and between ourselves, and then we expand that to things like we use things like intersectionality, words like intersectionality. So there's a simple way of describing that. My friend Dave, the first time I met him, he was speaking at a football event, and he was speaking from his perspective of trans football fans, and he put it simply as, we all get beaten up by the same people. And I think that's a really good way, a simplified version of talking about intersectionality. We all get beaten up by the same people. There's a lot of bigots out there. There's a lot of hatred out there. So if we as an LGBT community help each other out and support each other, and then we also expand that to, looking at other communities that are marginalised. So we should be supporting Black Lives Matter. We should be supporting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all these movements about freedom, because we know what it's like to have our freedom. I'm talking about white people supporting, white LGBT people supporting Black Lives Matter, because we know we can have some understanding of what it's like to be marginalised and be part of a minority as well. So I think the first thing is for us to work together. And the other thing as well I wanted to say was, don't assume people are not not supportive of what you're doing just by looking at them. So I think that a lot of people, I don't know if this is the point to mention it, but I think a lot of people are very judgmental. And I think that So for example, the bisexuality thing would be a good example there. So people will look at people and like Cinzia was saying, you know, married to a man, but not necessarily heteronormative or heterosexual or fitting into that particular box. But they might look at a woman that's married to a man and go, well, they're just a heterosexual cisgender woman, just a heterosexual cisgender woman. So you have to be open-minded and think about that other people have different experiences of life to you, and also within that LGBT community. So I'm a gay man, I don't know what it's like to be a trans man or a trans woman, but I've tried to educate myself and speak to people and make trans friends and meet different kinds of people in an attempt to understand other kind of people. So I think understanding is important, but also making sure that you don't just dismiss people.
I think that's a fascinating and an excellent point, because we you know, whilst we're all, LGBT identifying here on the panel, you know, we're all also allies of different people, you know, just like you said, you know, as a gay man, you can't necessarily fully understand the experiences of a trans woman. And obviously at the moment, bisexuality is stigmatized. And then we obviously have the facts that, queer identifying and trans people of color and of ethnic minorities are far more likely to be victimized and, be the victims of assault or other sorts of abuses. So we all have to both support and aid each other in a variety of different ways, I think. And now going deeper into that, obviously allyship and, being open and like we're all doing here, giving, different experiences a voice is vitally important. But do you think there's anything that we can do within the industry itself to go deeper, such as encouraging, greater levels of LGBT plus recruitment, or, materials to help educate people on the experiences, such as workplace education or anything like that? Do you think there's any aspects like that that can help the LGBT, experience and help in many ways, not just the gaming industry, but, wider society? Because in some ways, some people might look at the gaming industry as I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say a trailblazer, but slightly ahead of the curve. And yet we all know we've still got so much to do, even in the games industry. But yeah, do you think there's anything more substantial beyond allyship and, being a voice that can be done? Let's start with Cinzia.
To me, what you're describing is allyship. And I think that it's really important, and it's really easy to think of allyship as just being supportive rather than being active. And it's a big allyship is that active learning, that active, like trying to get that information without putting yourself in the center of the conversation. And it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm an ally, and feel good about yourself, and kind of like not do that work to make sure that you are an ally. And yeah, like making sure that people within studios feel comfortable to speak up and to speak up about anything, that you bring in externals, like I said, to talk about these things, and you encourage that culture of asking questions, of always kind of like bringing in new voices. You can't advance without that. But to me, that's all part of allyship. And maybe we have been very easy to kind of throw that word around when someone is not hating us. And it's about making sure that we actually hold people accountable to being allies.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting from your point of view, Robin. Do you guys actually put out material to the industry and stuff like that? And I know on our side with like hosting conferences, trying to get that representation. Do you think there's anything, beyond that can be done right now? I'm
going to sort of take my one hat off and put another hat on, because I'm also the co-founder of Outmaking Games. Yeah. Which is the UK's LGBTQ representation group. We unfortunately have just been hampered in our launch, because we launched back in November, did a really good event in February, and then obviously we had amazing plans for the summer of roaring forwards. That's not happening. So basically what we're doing is we've got our Slack channel, and if people want to join, they can visit outmaking.games, sign up that way. we're doing some digital stuff, we're doing some great panels, more of this sort of stuff. And we exist basically because it is about supporting each other. And I think it is about, sometimes I've spoken to a lot of people, and I haven't been in the industry long, but I've spoken to a lot of people where they stop themselves every time we get together, and they stop and go, I always forget how many LGBT people there are in the industry when we all sort of congregate and put our hand up. And obviously the diversity census revealed 21% figure, which again is an amazingly real figure. And for me, it is genuinely about sort of that lifting each other up. And it's about having that representation. And you're absolutely right, putting the other hat back on again. With gaming, we do try to sort of split ourselves and make sure that there's good industry content coming out as well, to show, to spotlight interviews, to demonstrate that this is a really diverse industry. And if somebody, the idea of that, I suppose, is if somebody's sat in their bedroom wanting to get into games but maybe not seeing themselves in it or thinking it's for them, if they read an interview that has a black lesbian or a trans guy or whoever they identify with, if that inspires them to sort of go, actually, you know what, that is me, I can do this. I think that's a great way as well. And really quickly, you mentioned recruitment right at the top. It's a really old-fashioned phrase, but recruitment starts before recruitment. So it's very much about asking and going out and finding groups. And if Outmaking Games has a channel about jobs, and I know that people, I won't name them, but I know people have come in and wanting to sort of reach into that group and offer jobs up to make sure they're going into more diverse pools than their usual sort of place they dip the toe.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Shay actually about visibility. A pretty obvious question, but you know, as a person of colour, Shay, it's a different sort of visibility to a person that is, their sexuality is less visible. So obviously people of colour are visible in a different way to people that are bisexual, where it's a sort of invisible minority, I think. I'm choosing my words carefully. And I just wondered what you felt about that, because I met, well, I know a black guy in, I know a black guy, one specific guy, Phil, one specific guy, and he was like, he didn't want to be like doing like a lot of stuff to say, you know, he didn't want to be like on panels and doing stuff. He just wanted to get on with making games, but he still felt like that he wanted to be supportive of helping other people of colour get into the games industry. And I said to him, you know, just stick a picture of you on your website. You don't have to like have a massive manifesto on there, but just by literally having a picture of you on your website saying, I'm like the guy that runs this company, is quite politically powerful, I think. So I was just thinking about that, Shay, from the point of view of visibility and bisexuality as well, I think.
Yeah, you beat me to it, so thank you. I was going to ask about... No, it's fine, it helps. I was going to, ask about, you know, because obviously the experiences are, you know, very different. So, yeah.
No, and actually that's, there was something there was a point I was going to make about like all of those things kind of put together, because it has been really interesting kind of existing in this space as like a very visually black, like, you know, I've got very textured hair, like I've got quite dark skin woman who is also bi. And like, I guess there is, especially with being bi, there is almost like a privilege in being able to sort of hide that in that sense. But I do think there is a lot of power in representation. And I guess we're going to talk about like representation later on in depth, but like, I think a lot of companies, I guess, are scared of saying or doing the wrong things. But I think actually, not that you just need to throw any and all representation out there and see what sticks, but I think people need to get over that thing of not wanting to be wrong, so then they just don't put the representation in there to begin with, because they're like, oh, well, what about the backlash, or, you know, what will people say, or, you know, those kinds of things. Just put it in there anyway, because you are going to reach and have an impact on so many more people. Like, I know that for me, kind of seeing presenters like on TV growing up, that was instrumental in me kind of wanting to pursue the career that I have. And that would make such a difference for recruitment, I think, just as one laywoman's opinion on like recruitment, even though I don't work at a studio. I do think there is a lot of power in representation, and I don't
Well,
know if that makes sense.
no, it makes total sense. And I think that probably, you know, works as a great segue into talking about representation in the industry. And, you know, to take a movie's phrase, so to speak, you know, what does the panel think to whether, you know, the industry is, you know, representing LGBT plus voices adequately, both behind and in front of the camera, you know, so to speak, in terms of the creators and the creations that we see? Because this is the part where we sort of slightly, in some respects, step outside of the bubble of the industry and start to look at the way it impacts on the public, and, you know, the way we sort of share our experiences and voices to everyone, because gaming's a very powerful medium in the world right now. So yeah, what does anyone think? Do we think that the industry is being adequately representative of LGBT plus voices, and within that, you know, the voices of different minorities within even LGBT plus?
I don't think anyone can ever say that they're representing anybody enough. I think there's always more that can be done. I think there's always more that can be explored. There is more topics that can be dealt with. What's interesting, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but if anyone read MCV this month, there was a column in there by me, which basically talks about how sort of transformative. Okay, hold on.
Really? Tell us more, Robin. What's the issue number, Robin?
It's the current one. It's the June one, whatever that is.
Has it got you on the? Are you on the front cover?
On page 13. Enjoy yourselves. No, basically, the last 12 months have genuinely, I think, been transformative for games. There has obviously been amazing things that have happened, but literally living in the AAA world for 2 seconds, you've had the authentic portrayal of an asexual character in the Outer Worlds. You've had portrayal of a non-binary character in Final Fantasy VII Remake, same-sex marriage in Borderlands 3 DLC, and literally now making history with The Last of Us 2, shipping 4 million units and becoming PlayStation's most best performing exclusive game, led by a lesbian character that also features bi and a trans character as well. So it's getting there, it's being done, but the indie scene obviously is the big one, and that's one that always gets so much more brilliant sort of stories that are developed from there. But I think, long way round of answering the question, I don't think there's ever a time that you're going to sit there and say, well, that's enough representation for now. I think there's always so much more that can be done.
I always ask when people are talking about representation and how much representation do we need more, I always somewhat mischievously ask, what is the end game? Dom knows this because I was asking Ukie about this. What is there an end game? Should there be an end game? And I'm not saying that we should discuss that now because it'll probably take half a day to discuss that. But, and I am being slightly mischievous when I ask that, but people go on about representation and we need more representation and we need more and we need this and we need this. But no one ever seems to sort of give an idea of what that would look like. And I don't think it's necessarily something that we can qualify, though I do like to keep asking. I don't think it's necessarily something we can qualify. So, but what I think we can do is work to ensure that people don't feel like the system is preventing them from expressing themselves or preventing them from seeing representation. And as leaders in the games industry, because that's what we can affect, and, you know, people that are other leaders in the games industry and everyone in the games industry can do their part. What can we do to make sure that we break down any barriers that we think are there? It's great to have games like Robin's mentioned, but if someone's thinking, I work at X big company and I feel like the management are saying, because you heard this, I'm trying to think of any specific examples that I've heard, but I've certainly heard other people have told me about it, that they've been in meetings where they said, we can't make the main character black because it will affect sales. Or we can't make the main character a woman. That's actually one of the most popular ones. And that's a system, isn't it? That's a system that needs breaking down. And by breaking down those systems, we give people the ability to feel not just feel, but to be able to express themselves.
I think that is, yeah, that's pretty much like where I was sort of leading to, because yeah, like it is easy and it is important to like call for representation constantly, but I guess the end game for me is like to the point where it's like normalized, just like with any diverse or any like axes of oppression. I just want it to get to the point where it's like this normalized thing where we don't even like blink at it and it's just accepted. And taking that one step further, I actually want to see more messy and like flawed portrayals of like marginalized people, because every time something comes out, everything is like dissected and like analyzed until it doesn't even mean anything, and we're throwing all these words around. But actually I want to see more flawed. I just want to see people kind of do stuff, throw it out there and see what happens. And I don't mean for doing sake, but I mean more so like not trying to kind of tick every single box, trying to make it perfect and trying to fine tune it, because, you know, we like people who exist on axes of marginalization, like we're flawed, you know, we're not a monolith, like we contain so many different multitudes. And so you're never going to represent like one person or like one, you know, ethnic minority or one gender or anything like perfectly. But I think having so many in there, by having so many portrayals, I think speaks to normalizing it eventually. I think that's what I want to see. More messy lesbians, more messy bis, like let's give me all of it. I'm ready.
Yeah, and Cinzia, did you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, mostly on the bit on like being in boardrooms where they're shutting these things down. I think that it's unfortunate that it comes down to minorities having to do the work, but doing the work of making sure that those people in those positions understand what their audience looks like, and that it can actually be a very good like point of view from a money point of view. It can be a good decision to put those minorities, because you bring in more people in, and it's going to be the loud minority that will be like giving you backlash. But like we've seen with The Last of Us too, it was like there was such backlash, but they brought in so much money. Like that's the kind of thing, like looking at these, not only these cases, but like the testimonials, the thing where you can see it making it a positive difference, and kind of bringing all these things in as like that constant business case that this is a good thing, and that when these kind of good things happen, that you can make the people in position of power with these things feel good that they have made that decision, kind of like, you know, throw a bone in that sense of like giving them something that they're going to be feel good about. It's going to help kind of like remove that first thing that like, oh, this isn't good. And also people's lives are not politics, and we need to stop pretending it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was going to add that as well, because obviously without, you know, in case anyone hasn't played it, not going into spoilers or anything, the controversy around The Last of Us 2 obviously fundamentally hit me as a trans woman, because, you know, whilst, you know, the representation is there, just even the notion of that representation caused such a massive backlash on social media that you couldn't move for you know, nastiness, which is obviously affecting. But I think what I'm trying to say is, the point is that shouldn't stop creators from doing it. It's about doing it enough that eventually it normalizes it, because we're going to have levels of backlash. That's just a part of history, and we just need to keep going until, as everyone says, it becomes more normalized, and those minority voices, those loud minorities, become more and more, well, I wanted to say drowned out, but actually what I really mean is hopefully, you know, learn something, and enjoy life. You know, that's the end game. You know, yeah, it's more about acceptance rather than, you know, conflict, I suppose. But no.
And when these things do happen, like finding the positive and like, you know, bringing together all the positives. Like, yes, there was backlash, but look at like those people that change, like that person, you might have saved their life by doing that. Like finding those things where there is a genuine positive impact to society by simply having good representation.
Yeah,
that changes.
No, exactly. Sorry, yeah, go on, Robin.
Sorry, if there's backlash, to be honest with you, and if there's backlash to a game, bring it on, because I think that really will help affect change, because it is causing a conversation. You don't want safe games. You don't just like everyone is sort of like happy and holding hands. To learn something, you have to feel something. And so if it's a backlash, learning, and they might learn, okay, well, I'm not going to game. Great, don't need you, go away. They're perfectly well, 4 million units. So and I've always sort of said, it's related to a game, a video, a film, reading a magazine, shopping. For the people that are boycotting, and you're going to bring on tenfold more people. There's a great story with Green Man Gaming. They started actively kicking people out of their shop off the platform. They're on far more people than they're losing. And I just think that applies to everything. And I think if people feel something, they learn something. And if people don't feel something, then just get rid of them.
I have I have a positive view of humanity. I'm a positive person. And my positive view of humanity is that people in general don't really care that much about other people. As long as they are, people just want to be left to get on with their lives. And as long as they're not doing stuff that hurts other people, like robbing them or murdering them or abusing them, then just leave them to get on with it. And they don't really care about what's happening next door. Sometimes they are encouraged to do that, to care about things by media or certain structures within our society. But generally, people just don't care about other people. They just want to live their lives, and they want to create a better life for their children, so their children have a better life than what they do. This really came into focus when I did a bus trip across America quite a few years ago. You think of Americans as, you know, like either really liberal, really right wing, and you know, we have this strange view of them. If I don't know any Americans, I don't know what the direct view of them is. And just like going across America, meeting all these different people, it's just like most of them just like, they don't care. They just want to live their lives. And I think that's the same with people's reaction to LGBT people or any other marginalised person. At heart, they don't really care. They just want to get on with their lives.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of one of the most interesting things that I think a lot of people mistake. It's like, it's something I often say is when people say, oh, you do sort of activism or anything like that, I say, like, no one actually wants to be an activist. It's, you know, everyone just wants to live a happy life, and, you know, and everything that goes with it. I think one of the things I wanted to quickly make sure that we fitted in is, you know, do we think that there's any sort of common mistakes that are happening when we talk about representation in gaming? You know, not to make too negative, it's just like, like Shay says, actually, one of my things is when stories are tried to make so precise that there's no real personality or heart or individuality within the way plus people's stories are told within gaming, because, you know, some creators think more, like you say, in the AAA space, feel they need to hit certain points, which is kind of what's been so nice about The Last of Us. It's messy, human, it's real, and I think that helps the storytelling and normalizing. But does anyone here on the panel think there is something like a bugbear maybe that they have, or anything that they think, you know, affects representation or storytelling to do with LGBT?
Touching on was the fact about culture isn't monolithic and society isn't monolithic, and there's lots of different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So there, as we mentioned earlier, there are black people that happen to be bisexual, people that happen to be black, and the subsections of subsections of subsections. And I think that you don't want, you know, a lot of people, and I think a lot of people in the LGBT community are guilty of this as well. So an example, people assume because I'm a gay man, I'm into Drag Race, yeah? Or I'm into drag, right? I'm not gay, I'm just completely uninterested. But there's a lot of people that are, yeah, fine, Robin, leave, you know, absolutely fine. But my point there is that people just assume because you are in this group that you are this way, or you are interested in this thing. And I think within the LGBT community, we can be very guilty of that as well. And it's not monolithic culture. Lots of people are into lots of different things and cross over into different things. I'm a gay man that's into video games. I'm into lots of other things as well. Yeah, I was also going to say what you basically were just talking about is what Shay was talking about earlier with regards to messy characters.
Yeah, that's why I was iterating that, because obviously Shay beat me to it in the fact that I would is one of my things. But yeah, I didn't know if anyone else, like, you know, obviously Simon added, you know, something important. I didn't know if anyone else had anything important, or as given we're getting close to time here, if anyone has any, you know, final thoughts that they would like to leave the audience with before we move into the Q&As and the chats and everything like that.
Go.
Thank you. With representation, I think, like, if we can move away from making people that are part of that representation the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
I think that, like, if we can get rid of that, there's so many examples that come to mind, especially when it comes to transgender people. They tend to be the butt of that joke a lot of the time, and if we can just, like, delete that completely, I'd be much happier.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, it's really good to see in the Final Fantasy VII remake, the non-binary character that was written in and treated with good respect obviously replaced the character of beautiful boy, who was just, not the character, but the treatment and everything was just horrendous. I was going to talk about authentic representation. It's my little thing that I like to talk about. And for me, it does pick up on all of these sort of points in the sense that it normalizes everything. So for me, I lean on Borderlands at this point, because there are moments in that game where you miss the fact that a guy has a boyfriend. If you miss one line, it's gone. There's no, I think Sir Hammerlock talks about his ex-boyfriend. No rainbow flags fly up a pole. There's no confetti. There's no sort of massive hurrah, he's gay. It literally is like, he said boyfriend, what was that? It's gone. And I think there's so many other examples of that. And there's so many ways you can actually really start to embed and just embrace it. I mean, I'm for want of sort of a better, obviously, I think it was mentioned earlier, Grand Theft Auto. I'm a big Grand Theft Auto fan. Is it particularly sort of fair on representation? Not really. But there's another one coming out, and so I am genuinely curious now. We've sort of moved on, how they're going to deal with that. And for me, having a sort of a lead character in a game that really does ride the line and occasionally fall over it, actually potentially being gay, but still maybe falling foul of some of those tropes, will start to sort of, that really does mess things up a bit. And I quite like that idea.
Yeah, and Shay, Shay, do you think you'd like to add?
It's like, I know maybe this is a bit hypocritical given what I was saying about, like, portrayals being messy. Obviously the game isn't out yet, but Cyberpunk, I have a lot of, like, question marks around that, just because it seems like, I don't know, intent is always hard to tell, and in a lot of cases it is relevant, but I think I just worry about the intent of, you know, their actions and how they're handling, because in and of itself, like, a sort of a character creation screen that isn't tied to, like, binary genders is great, but then knowing that, like, the NPCs will respond to you based on what, like, your voice sounds like, I think it's like 10 steps forward and, like, a million steps back. So I think just kind of taking care, like, obviously, but what we were saying about, you know, things wanting to be normalized and, you know, wanting messier portrayals, I do think that a degree of care has to be made, and I do want to reiterate that. I'm not saying don't care with, like, LGBT portrayals, but I think just having a bit more care, a bit more understanding, a bit of, like, deeper, and, you know, just knowing, like, what is okay and what isn't, and even if you get that wrong at times, try and avoid that. But yeah, I don't know if I did.
No, that makes perfect sense to me.
Cyberpunk is concerning, but I think it's still, if you zoom out of it and just look at it as a whole, I feel like the potential to still be defining and still be making history for what it is offering. I think there are nuanced issues that I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think if you do sort of look at it, and it is one step forward, 3 steps back, 1 step in that direction, 2 in that direction. But I would argue that at least they're trying.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I come back to. Like, I completely agree.
Yeah, and Cyberpunk, remember, is from a very specific country. It's from a country that is, different with LGBT rights, a right-wing government. So I think that it's important that we question what they're doing, and we keep that questioning, and journalists like Robin some questions about this and say, what's the representation? And Shay's asking questions there as well. And I think if we as a community put pressure on those people, then at least they know. I mean, they might dismiss it, and they might, some bean counter somewhere go, 0.% of our market, so we don't necessarily need to do anything about it. But if we don't, if we don't question it, if we don't ask the developer, then what? And also it's interesting with it, we can not buy the game, which I think is quite an important point.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh no, come on, Robin.
Trust me, we're already all over it and very much sort of lining up. There's a great example of Don't Nod to Tell Me Why, which is coming out very soon. Apparently, let's see how the coronavirus affects that one. But I mean that again, history. It's going to be the first game with a lead protagonist is a member of the trans community, and there was a lot of concern from some of our readers and some of our contributors. Suddenly, they see the world making a trans game, and like massive alarm bells start going off of like, oh my god, what are they doing? So we actually reached out to them. We had a great interview at Cinzia magazine. We spoke to them. We learned not only how they worked with GLAAD, they also worked with various members of their team who are trans, and the actor who portrays the character is also trans and was involved very much in crafting that character and crafting the way the story is being told. So understanding those levels, I think, is really important. Holding people to account is really important. And I think as well, maybe it is as Simon suggested, it is about some level of acceptance of the fact that it is coming out of a country where their view of equality is different probably to other people's views. And also, it's never an excuse, but also we have to remember that the theming of cyberpunk as a whole being a hyper-sexualized, hyper-commercialized life, can't think of the bloody word, styling, let's go with that, that there are some things, the poster controversy that they released straight away, and then sort of ran like it's all like that, it's all meant to be hypersexualized, and it's like, well, don't release one like that out of context. That was just dumb. If you understand the way it was pitched, like all the characters are hypersexualized, you can start to slightly fresher look. So I think there's so many levels of understanding to this, but yeah.
And we're not in any way saying that we are excusing someone because they're from a different society or a different culture. No. But it's reasonable for us to, question them and say, especially if they're making an entertainment product that's going to be sold all around the world to different cultures, and there are a lot more accepting of LGBT plus people, then we have to say to them, okay, that may be okay in Poland, the way that you're representing those hypersexualized images or trans people or whatever, but it's not okay where I am. So I want you to know about it.
Absolutely.
I think kind of everything we've just said there kind of sums up some really nice sort of actionable points. It's about understanding, it's about education and learning from experiences. And like when I said before, when we say like messy, it's what that means is like a true, or at least for me, hopefully I'm not misquoting Shay, it's like having a true, real representation of experiences of all sorts of people from all sorts of different intersectionalities, and so I think that's some good actionable advice, because that's obviously certainly what I want to see is, it's what the panel wants to see as well, is just a range of different experiences. It's, like Cinzia was saying, it's not just, how being the core, you're always the villain or like that. It's just about having all sorts of different experiences where it becomes normalised a bit at times. Dom says otherwise. I feel like I should ask some questions of the audience in case, because I've got 2 questions I can see right here. Is that right for timing, Dom? Or
Yep, I've returned, just making sure. Hopefully everyone's connection has been stable enough that you haven't been disrupted too much. Literally, damn my internet provider. However, thank you all for such a great question, the core of the panel. Thank you so much. I am absolutely by all the knowledge and wisdom you've bestowed. You've put on us. Let's put that way, instead of making it a grammar lesson. So, in terms of questions, there's nothing on Slido, which is both good because that means no one feels like they need to not submit questions anonymously. But then again, at the same time, it's up to people's choice. But the first question we'll go with is from Oscar. Given the pressures facing the trans community at the moment with J.K. Rowling and the backtracking related to the Gender Recognition Act, what impact does this mean for wider LGBTQ plus rights, and what can we as an industry do about that? Anyone?
Yeah, I suppose we'll get different thoughts here. First of all, hi, Oscar. Oscar, obviously my friend and colleague, so thank you, Oscar. Yeah, I mean, for me, and then it'd be interesting to see what the panel says, as a trans person, I can't tell you how many sleepless nights I've had recently for the reports that came out in the Times and stuff, and whilst to some that might seem dramatic, I'm sure not on this panel, but I'm more talking to a wider group of people. I think for me, it's just nice is when you support an understanding from the people around you about what is going on sort of beyond the gaming industry. But equally, as mentioned with Gameopolis and Dotnod, I think it's ever more to show that basically people are people. We're just people, and nothing more than that. There's no malice, there's no secrecy, there's no desire to be an activist or anything like that. I just want to live a life, enjoy my life, everything like that, and not to get into the specifics, go to the toilet without having to think about where I'm going and what I'm doing and all that sort of stuff, and just feel accepted. So yeah, I mean, that has been a big worry, but from my point of view as someone who is trans, yeah, just knowing I have the support of my peers, and that to tell trans stories alongside all other stories to show that we're all just people. But that's my side of it. Picking
up on Simon's point, he made an excellent point about everyone in the community, around the community, has a responsibility to look after each other.
Yeah.
And I think for me that's one thing, as somebody obviously who doesn't have that lived experience, the only thing I can do is reach out and say, I support you, gaming supports you, the industry supports you, the whole community supports you. And I think the new magic is that nobody's written Harry Potter. It just existed. It managed to magic all those stories into existence. And I think it's just interesting how, yeah, it seems genuinely as a community, as a world, we seem to be slipping backwards. But there are ways and means of correcting that, and I'm hopeful that corrections will start later this year. But yeah, that's basically what I've got, is just like, I'm doing what we can do to support everybody. Yeah, I think that's right, in the way that, it was, this is a time when obviously like people like me are looking for support, but equally, we have Black Lives Matter going on at the same time, and that's, other people who are marginalised will be looking for everyone, which obviously includes me and the trans community. So I think it is about that inter support and, making sure that everyone's okay, basically. Absolutely. And let's also not forget about exactly. And let's not also forget about the lives of Black trans people. Yeah, the people right at the pinnacle of that problem, which is copping it from every side at the moment, and is worryingly underreported when it comes to death. Yes.
I think that it's important also to remember the precedent this is setting, because the things we're hearing the people right now, we heard them in the past, people about lesbians. Like, it's the same discourse that's repeating itself over and over again. So we can't let anything. If we're closing our eyes on this, then like we're setting a precedent for everyone else, and it's so important. And as a games industry, we have a lot more power through bring in to the government that we think we do. And maybe it's time that we kind of start exerting a bit of pressure through that kind of a power that we have.
I wanted to make the same point about being part of the same community, and trans rights are LGB rights as well. Everyone, should be working together. We are. I've said it earlier. We all get beaten up by the same people. It's an easy catchphrase, but it's really true. I'm very passionate about this, and I'm very passionate about trans rights. And if you think to yourself that you're not interested in trans rights, and T shouldn't be part of the LGBT, then I'm trying not to swear. If you're an LGB person and you think there's no T in LGBT, then you can F off, because exactly what Cinzia was saying. If they start rolling back rights or attempting to roll back rights for trans people, what are they going to do next? Yeah, I'm really about this, and I'm going to get very soapboxy now about this. If they, the establishment, start saying that trans people can't go in, I hate talking about toilets because it's such a distracting issue, but it is a good for this point. If they start saying that go in this bathroom or changing room at sport center, think, well, lesbians can't go in female changing rooms because they're after the women, or gay men can't go in male changing rooms because they want to look at all the men. It gets worse, and then and then it extends to all aspects of people in society. Black people can't go in there because we've made this law that says black people can't go in there. We've had that in the past. We do not want to roll back to that. So I'm very passionate that all our rights are all intertwined with each other, and we should be very angry about it. And LGBT people should be bloody well campaigning and allies with trans people. That's what I'm really passionate about. And then the other thing that I'm really passionate about as well is how we handle this and how we bring other people on board. And this is very much epitomised by the whole J.K. Rowling saying stuff about women and women and trans people. What we have to do to get change in society and maintain change in society is make sure that everyone, or at least a vast majority of people in society, is on board with that. So it's very easy to dismiss someone like J.K. Rowling as a TERF. I absolutely hate the word TERF. I think it's very reductive, and I think it automatically creates divisions within our society. I think that we, as a LGBT community, we should be listening to the concerns of cisgender women, because if we don't listen to their concerns, then how are we going to bring them on board with what we want to be on board with? We might not necessarily agree with them, but we need to at least listen to what they're saying. And if they're saying they have these concerns, we have to try and listen to what they're saying and respond to them and say, this is why your concerns are not something that you should be concerned about. And I do think that we listen to those people and not just dismiss them straight away.
But they have to listen back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people have been coming out and defending that, and people have been making these statements, as Sophia said, the toilet thing, and as you said, Simon, the toilet thing is completely reductive. It's the most basic, stupid point ever. And to be honest with you, gender-neutral toilets are just the easiest thing to have. Because you don't need to worry about it. It's just, you don't need to worry about how many toilets we need for the men or the women or wherever else. You just have gender-neutral toilets. It makes life so much easier for business people, for building management people. But if you have these conversations, and there has been pushback, and there's been a lot of debate about the whole sort of J.K. Rowling thing, and I do struggle to say her name now, but it genuinely is something that you have to, in every debate, there has been responses. Responses were made to her, and she just wasn't listening. And you go through that weaving of like, was she just being a bit weird? Was she arguing the toss? Was she doing sort of stuff? And then when it came out, I think it was the other day before, that she was actively deleting tweets that supported Stephen, that was the super nail through the coffin of like, oh yeah, you really are just transphobic. And so you agree with having a conversation back, but when you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, then probably is time for that block button or that turf button.
I couldn't agree more, because like I guess to contextualize it really quickly, I've had a lot of like, I guess, well-meaning white people sort of reach out to me with everything that's going on regarding like brutality and like the fight against, you know, whatever's going on in the world. And I've kind of had to say to myself, I'm putting a limit on like how well like good intentions can get you.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can have a conversation, you can mistakes. As I said, you know, it is important to feel comfortable being uncomfortable, but it starts to get a bit dog whistly, and it's just like, how much more patience do you expect me to have? And also, it's like, after a while, I'm like, I'm gonna get tired of this, and the responses are probably not gonna be the nicest, but there's only so hand holding that can be done. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like, yeah, she needs to go into the sea, into the bin. No.
I mean, for me, you know, if I'm talking honestly, the J.K. Rowling topic, I mean, I had to block her. I mean, and I'm not saying like because we have interactions or anything like that. I just had to do it at some point for my own mental health, because it was so draining. I mean, I remember, I think a couple of weeks back, and I think this point of this whole summer that we've had, and, you know, and I'm sure, you know, like, I mean, it's small in comparison to what I've been experiencing through Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, it was like turning on the TV in the morning instantly, and it automatically goes to the last channel you've got on, which was ITV in this case, and you've got a big old panel about J.K. Rowling in the morning, and you're like, right, well, that's what I wanted to see, you know, wake up in the morning to see people, you know, talking about my right to be me, basically. And I think that's the thing with J.K. Rowling. She had a lot of challenges over the years. Everyone passed off that it was a middle-age moment. Her PR team did a wondrous job. We all wanted to forgive her because everyone loved the product. But eventually, she just went with it. And I suppose, yeah, that has to be the point where activity hurt, or we can take a slightly different approach and go with the positivity and focus on the people who, not just the allies and the people who support, but the people in the middle who are like, want to learn, want to understand. There's no malice in their questions. They want to grow, learn, and understand. They're the people I want to focus my time on, because they're the people who, you know, just may not have met a trans person or a bisexual person or whatever. And they're the people who are just ready to listen and understand. But, you know, if people don't want to listen and understand, I think eventually you have to just see how much resilience then, but look after yourself first.
You do have to cut them. As Shay said, like, you can have a conversation, you can engage with people, you can let them ask, but the whole point of asking a question is to learn something. And if they're not learning anything and they're repeating the same thing, or they're repeating the question or whatever, it slowly gets to that point of you can just fuck off. And it really is sort of, that's it. That's the end of that. And I really would encourage everyone to use the Twitter sort of mute keyword functions. It does make your life so much better.
Amazing.
On top of that, some of us have the privilege to be able to have those conversations because it doesn't impact us negatively, because it's so much conversation when you don't have to fight for your life and you don't have to fight for your rights. And we have to acknowledge that privilege and use it for good, and use it to have those conversations and to be those people that put ourselves in the front line instead of waiting for the people that are in danger to put themselves in the front line. And also I wanted to touch on the word TERF because it's not being used as an insult, but it was created by them. And it stands for Trans Exclusionary Feminists. And it's got the word feminist in it. And it shouldn't be used, but they're not trying to pretend that it's a slur, but it was a word that they created themselves because they wanted to call themselves feminists. So it's really important to remember that. The radical is the word that I forgot. Thanks, Oscar.
Sorry, Dom. Bringing it really quickly full circle back to games. It does really come back to the point there. Sorry, it's a games panel. About the responsibility that we have is the same as in movies, the same as in TV. You can telling stories, educating, but doing it through enjoyment. Like nobody particularly enjoys being hit over the head with a stick, but you can have fun and educate time. And I think if games can do that, like I say, Tell Me Why coming out with a great trans story, really well done, very exciting how that goes. being like making you play as a gay character, making you play as a trans character, not being like, oh, you can choose to have a gay relationship, you can choose to be trans or whatever. I think making people play that option, making people play that character, sorry, I think is a really positive thing.
I was going to say, I was just going to mention, because Oscar probably wanted me to mention this, but as to what we can do in the games industry, and I'm talking to Oscar and a couple of other people, and we're in the beginning stages of trying to set up a project with some trans people to a game project for people that aren't trans, if that makes sense, to help them understand the trans experience, particularly trans kids, and how that goes, because there's a lot of issues at the moment. So a few of us have been talking about what we can do as games creators, which is like what Robin was just saying. What can we do as games creators? And I think that's the question, isn't it? What can we do as creative people to help? And so we set up a project where we can represent, and you know, there are games that feature trans characters, but we specifically want to make a project that helps people understand trans people, because we think understanding is important.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic.
Trying to do something.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic, actually. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all your points about this, like, just for your sake as well, Robin, like, even though this is specifically aimed at the games industry, the overall LGBT plus rights overall do make a difference to the industry, because obviously those are the policies and governs that
absolutely
make everyone. So having that kind of discussion and widening that is so important, and I think that's what's made, personally for me, such a great to have you lovely people talk about it, because it's like normally people would be worried about we're going away from games. Actually, you guys have just been absolutely encouraging. Actually, we think about more beyond games, but also bring it back to games. So that's an amazing point. Just before we end, just quickly, just so these two people don't feel left out, which I'll combine the questions together. From Ed, an anonymous user, hopefully you're both still here. Agree with Shay, it would be great to get more messy, raw and realistic portrayals of diverse characters. Are we relying on indies, or can this be put into AAA development to take more risks, such as the success of The Last of Us 2? And then the anonymous user to kind of elevates that point by saying, how do we reveal a game character to be LGBT plus in a respectful way, and using your own experiences to kind of suggest how, just before we end.
I mean, so if it's for me to start and keep it brief so that everyone, because you mentioned time, I think it really depends on the context that this is being told sometimes, in terms of the way to reveal a character. That would be my opinion. If it's integral to the plot, then you obviously want to make it a major thing. If it's trying to teach something, tell something, for example, again, not doing too many spoilers, but in The Last of Us, the story of Ellie and her kind of integral to that. But equally, I think it can just be as simple as what Robin was saying about Borderlands. It's there, it's not a big deal, and that's it. And they're just a person like everyone else is, whoever that is and whatever their experience are in the game. So that would be my side from that one. And then to give a brief one on the earlier point, I think, indies, I work with indies a lot, I think indies are definitely the way and will continue to lead the way within diversity. But I don't think that sort of takes anything away from the AAA space. And I think the AAA space can definitely do that. And I think the AAA space should do that, because a lot of the time they're reaching different areas at times. So I think it's very important, and just like any experience, I think the more that are embracing it, the better.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. I mean, the AAA space is obviously the one that has the biggest impact, purely by numbers. We've had demonstrable, whatever proof that queer games can sell. The Last of Us 2, thank you. And it's all there. Just go and do it. But then do it in like a in that sort of authentically normal kind of way. Like, I really want to see a game where there's 20 characters and so 2 of them are just going to be queer because that's what happens.
Yeah.
But not in a forced way, not in a way of like, this is a game that's definitely, you know, I've said it before, if it becomes so normal that it puts Gayming Magazine out of business, I'll actually be okay with that, because I'll count that as a job done, because it will become so normal that I won't have to write about. And that's great, and that's perfect. And I think just making sure that everybody's sort of pushing in that direction of like, you creating a game with a cast of 20 or 30 different characters, you've got to sit there and, okay, so how many are going to be queer? How many are going to be people of colour? How many are going to be female? How many are going to be trans? How many are going to be... And I think there's so many different sort of like... And it's not doing the maths on it. It's just being representative of a normal community.
Yeah, I want to say I couldn't agree more. Like, yeah, everything you said, that's pretty much what I was going to say. It should just be normalized, where it's like, oh, this character is just gay, is bi, like, and you know, it's just a thing that we don't even blink at. It is just completely normalized. And yeah, I think for a while, like, games were sort of leaning on the indie space to kind of lead the charge in terms of like audacity, as like Ed said. But I think and like to hope the change, like given The Last of Us, it'll be really interesting to see the sorts of games that we see in the play space the next couple of years for sure.
Absolutely. And anyone else? No, awesome. And that's an amazing point to really end it off on, because like, one thing that I've wanted to say is like in terms of representation, just like there was a magical moment in BioShock Infinite, the DLC, where I just came across a like gay couple, and the game didn't actually go, look at this gay couple. They were just a part of the scene. And I think, like you've all said, it's all about normalizing and getting to the point where we are just there and a part of the story and have interesting tales to tell. So with that, thank you, all you amazing people, for spending what seems to be a characteristic of mine now, to go 15 minutes over for a panel, but that's a me thing. But you guys have been absolutely fantastic. I love all your points, and there's definitely stuff here that the audience can grab and go forward with, especially with the current situation with the trans acts. Definitely for my activities, I'm trying to engage how Raise the Game can support at the moment, and just in general, all other like campaigns such as Black Lives Matter and other forms of diversity. It's so important for us just to support each other and be there. It's great. But thank you all, the audience as well, for listening to us all. As I say in the chat, this has been recorded and will be put onto YouTube, just in case you've got any friends who can attend, or anyone else who wants to watch and hear these amazing words. And in the next 5-10 minutes, as I've also mentioned in the chat, I will be opening a Zoom call that's available for you guys and the panelists to join into for the next hour, just to have a casual drink. May it be alcoholic or non-alcoholic, because you don't have to drink like a drink. A drink is just a drink. Like, as long as you like it, that's all that matters. So thank you again, and thank you to the chair, Sophia. Thank you to
thank you to everyone.
Robin, Shay, and Shay for being such lovely panelists. And if you're not joining us or joining me later and some of these lovely people later for the Zoom call, please have a great night and enjoy.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.